Hey, we've worked with hundreds of Americans to help them retire. Folks that have got like 5 million bucks and they're scared to death to do it, and others that have like 300 grand and they're like not worried about a thing. So in today's video, it's a big challenge, but I'm going to distill down the knowledge that we've learned over the past 30 years of doing this, and I'm going to give it to you in 20 minutes. We're going to cover why I think retirement calculators are lying to you, the six-figure mistake that most people are making and they don't even know it. We're going to talk through how do we pay less than 10% in taxes in retirement. We're going to talk about the withdrawal order and the mistakes that you're probably making that are draining your savings. And then I think number 5 will surprise you more than anything else. So stick around for number 5. All right, so let's just jump into it. Retirement calculators are lying to you, and here's why. Most retirement calculators, all they do is they take whatever your expenses are gonna be in a given year, and then they just inflate those going forward, and they just leave them the same. And I have found that when you do that, you could be saving more money than you actually need to, and here's why. I call it the retirement smile, and it's maybe something you've heard of before, but the point is this: spending starts out high. We retire and we're young and we're able to go and do things. Travel, spend time with the grandkids, whatever it may be for you, right? And so we need more money when we're young and we're able to go and do, right? But then maybe in our late 70s, early 80s, we really start to slow down and we're just not going and doing. And so our spending is not nearly as high. But then towards the end of life, maybe into our 80s, late 80s, early 90s, whatever it may be, spending can ramp back up because of healthcare costs. And if we're not planning for that, what I call retirement smile or the spending smile, and we're just going with the static large number right out of the gate and we're inflating that for the rest of our life, I think you could be drastically misrepresenting how much money you actually need in retirement. So recently we were working with a couple who had been told that they have to save $1.8 million to retire to be able to do the things that they want to do, right? And basically at that point they had 1.4 million bucks, and everybody else they've been talking to had been saying, we're gonna have to work a few more years in order to get you to that $1.8 million number. Naturally, you're gonna get older and you're not gonna go do and spend the way that you spend right now out of the gate when you retire. And so what we were able to do is walk them through that spending smile and tell them, hey, I don't really think you need to work another couple years to get to that $1.8 million figure. I think that you can retire now. And so that's why I think retirement calculators are lying to you. And I think you need to think through the spending smile high out of the gate when we're able to go and do and have fun, take the grandkids fishing, go on trips, whatever it is, take the boat out. And then later in life, it's going to slow down. We're still going to be healthy, but we're just not going to be going and doing, right? And then towards the end of life, a lot of times we'll ramp that back up a little bit because of healthcare costs. Okay, number 2, I told you it's the six-figure mistake that most people make, and here's what it is. It's Social Security timing, and it's incredibly important. Most people, I think, just kind of retire and assume that we're going to turn Social Security on as soon as we retire. And what I'm saying is that may not be the best decision, because from 62 to 70, Social Security goes up by 8% per year. That's a guaranteed 8% per year. And so what I'm telling you is that we need to understand Social Security timing, because if we get it wrong, it literally could be a six-figure mistake. And if we think about that, turning Social Security on, you know, that's maybe a couple thousand at 62, but it is $3,000 at 70. That's $1,000 a month reduction that is stuck with you for the rest of your life. Now, every situation is different. I am by no means saying the answer to Social Security is delaying it, right? There are absolutely situations where it makes sense to turn on Social Security right out of the gate. But a lot of times, if we can afford to wait, that can be a big benefit to us. And so I think the real question is not necessarily when should we turn it on, but how long can we afford to wait? And so one of the clients that we were working with, 900 grand saved up, all right? And, they were okay, but their monthly income was pretty tight. Like they were fine, but it was pretty tight. And so by just making simple change of delaying Social Security from 62 to 70 on the higher income earner, and then turning the spouse's Social Security, the lower income, on sooner, we literally picked up a couple $100,000 roughly of extra income in their income plan, which then, even though they were already okay, then it gave them the buffer room to have a little bit of extra room in their monthly spending or their monthly expenses. All right. And so Social Security timing can literally be a six-figure mistake. And we just need to make sure we're doing some income planning there in order to get that right. And so I know there's a lot of things we're talking about here. And in fact, we actually have a toolkit put together that is out there for you to grab down there in the description below, where you can go download that toolkit, and it's going to talk through a lot of the things that we're talking about today. One of them specifically will be Social Security timing. Number 3, and this is a big one. This one I get passionate about, okay? And it's how do we pay less in taxes? How do we get under 10% in taxes? And so there's a difference between your marginal tax rate and your effective tax rate, all right? And most people think in the marginal tax rate. Those are our tax brackets. When someone says I'm in the 12%, the 22 or the 24% bracket, they're talking about their marginal rate. What that is saying is that if you're in the 22% bracket, your last dollar that you earned is getting taxed at 22%. But that is not, hear me, that is not your effective tax rate, okay? Your effective tax rate in most cases is actually going to be quite a bit lower than that, all right? And so understanding your effective tax rate and how can we use the tax laws that we have today and timing of different income in order to drive your effective tax rate down is something that's very important. And it's very common that retirees maybe are in a 12 or a 22% marginal tax rate, but their actual effective tax rate is 10% or even lower. Point number 4 is withdrawal order mistakes that can drain your savings. And so 3 and 4 kind of blend together because we want to have dollars that we can utilize at different times in order to pay less in taxes. Okay, so IRA withdrawals or 401k withdrawals are going to be taxable, normal income. Roth IRA withdrawals are going to be tax-free. And then your taxable account withdrawals, you're going to pay a capital gains tax rate on unless you're under the threshold to where you will pay 0 in taxes or in capital gains taxes. Okay, and so when we think about this, we need to have strategy behind our tax planning. And so I'm kind of talking about 3 and 4 points here together, but when we talk about our spending smile, like we talked about earlier, taking money out of IRAs earlier in life to reduce down what our required minimum distributions are going to be later in life might be incredibly important. What I'm trying to tell you is that we need to think about lifetime taxes versus just last year's taxes. And so having those 3 different buckets that I always talk about, our tax deferred, our tax-free, and our taxable buckets, how do we blend those together to keep your income low but your cash flow high like you need it to keep you in the most efficient tax rate possible is the name of the game here. It's easy to think, hey, when I retire, I'm just going to spend through some cash, my taxable account, and then I'm gonna worry about, taking money from my IRA later in life. But the problem is you're gonna be forced to take required minimum distributions later in life. And if we let those IRAs dollars grow and accumulate, those required minimum distributions could be quite large, right? If you let your IRAs grow and you get $1.5–2 million inside of those IRAs, your required minimum distributions could easily be $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, depending on the amount that you have in that bucket and how old you are. Out there at an age where we already agreed our retirement smile, that's where we're gonna be in kind of our lower spending years. Number 5, and this I think is the biggest risk. And it's something that I talk about all of the time. The biggest risk in retirement, in my opinion, is running out of time. Okay, hear me there, not running out of money, running out of time. Here's what I see all of the time. Folks that have done a really good job saving, and because of all the things we've talked about already, it's really hard for them to give themselves permission to spend because they either haven't talked through the retirement smile, they haven't put any plan together, or they just don't want to pay taxes, right? And they think that they're going to run out of money at some point in life. And just delaying retirement in general starts to take time away from you. And that is something that is not guaranteed. And so understanding when you can retire, how much you can spend, and how do you do that in the most efficient way possible is going to help you sort of buy back your time. In other words, trying to give you permission to spend and to go do those things while you're young and you're able, like take the grandkids on trips or take your wife or your husband on trips or your friends or your family, buy the boat, buy the house, whatever it is. I don't know what it is for you, but running out of time in retirement because we're always waiting until our accounts get a little bit bigger, or we're always waiting until we maybe feel more comfortable with spending that money, or we're always waiting because we don't really want to pay that tax this year. I think that is the biggest risk in retirement. And so if these are things that you need help with or that you want to talk through, we're happy to do that with you. But if you've got to handle it on your own, that's totally fine too. I just hope this video was helpful to you. And I think that points number 3 and 4, reducing your taxes and making sure that you have the correct withdrawal order is incredibly important. And so what I've done is I've made a video that I named it Turning Your Brokerage Account into a Roth IRA. And basically that's talking about withdrawal order. And so you should watch that video now.